Becoming vulnerable has been a journey for me, but it's definitely has been what has helped me. Even doing podcasts like this, like being able to tell my story and to say it out loud, knowing that I might be able to help somebody else, definitely pushes me and keeps me going forward. Another thing is, like I've said, just don't stuff it. It does not help. It's going to come back at some point in time, so why not just deal with it now? And I know, it's hard to find those groups of people, but sometimes you just have to put yourself out there to find them. Like, they didn't just come to me. I had to go out there and find those groups.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of the podcast. I am excited because I got to chat with one of our former guests in the interview we did together. Oh my gosh, I think it's been over a year, I think. Right, I think it's been that. That episode was called Navigating New Love After Loss, and it was with Elizabeth Hall and Dave Devine. And today I have Elizabeth. Hi, Liz. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me back.
I'm so glad you are back. And a reason we are recording another one is that time we talked about mainly the grief and process of you that you had after the death of Bryan, your husband, and then the that episode is about you and Dave then connecting and after each of you had lost your spouses. But one of the things we didn't touch that much upon in that episode was your previous grief experience, which had been the death of your mom. And so today that will be part of the focus of the conversation. So just so that the listeners know, this is like a prequel, a prequel to the, a prequel to the, it's a sequel, prequel, sequel, whatever to the other interview. It's a sequel, but it's a prequel because it was something that happened before Bryan died. So anyway, so let's chat about you. So Liz, tell us about you, your upbringing, where were you born, raised, and all that kind of stuff, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I grew up in New York, near Buffalo, New York, so Western New York, and I had, the picture perfect life, so to say, with, the perfect family. I was actually adopted when I was a day old or 2 days old. So, and then my brother was adopted as well, and we had a great life with, the perfect house and the perfect school and everything that you would want. My parents both worked really hard for everything that they were able to give us. And, we had to work hard to earn our own things. And it was just definitely a great life growing up.
That's great. Now, you lived then in New York for how long?
So I was in New York until I graduated from college. So
Oh, yeah. So that is,
so a long time, definitely.
yeah. You're a New York. You're a New Yorker.
I am.
New
Same
Yorker, yeah.
house. New
Yeah.
Yorker, yeah.
Now in Texas. Now she lives in Texas, just so people know. But were you is it okay if I ask you, because I didn't know the part that you had been adopted. Is that something that we can talk in this episode a little bit as well
Yeah,
of that dynamic? Okay, cool.
absolutely.
Okay, so that's how you were then brought up. How far apart are you from your brother? How
So
are you guys?
he's 2 years older than me, but they didn't adopt him until he was 4. So I was 2. So I was technically like an only child for 2 years, and then he came along.
Oh, okay. So then he, even though he's older, you were first in your
Yeah,
family.
he
So
was
it's
in
as if
foster.
you're the
I was just saying he was in foster care and stuff like that before they adopted him.
Okay, so let's just I'm curious because I wonder if the memories are even there for you at 2 when your brother came and having a older brother
Yeah.
join your family. Do you remember anything about that?
No, not really. No. I mean, through pictures, yes, but no, I don't remember any of it. And I mean, as of now, we don't have a relationship at all. But back
Okay.
in the day, it was just typical brother sister stuff until he turned, I think it was like high school. Then he started to get himself in trouble and all that fun stuff. But
Not fun
yeah,
stuff.
not
Fun
fun for
stuff
my
maybe.
parents.
Fun, not fun for your parents or for
No.
you, and that's part, I'm assuming, the reason of it now being a
Yeah,
little different between you guys. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So that did that all occur prior to your mom passing then?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes, yes and no.
yes and no. You see, guests don't normally know what kind of questions I'm going to ask. So then in that process too, if I ever do ask something that you're like, let's not talk about that. We don't have to talk about it because I normally am like, I'm curious, of course, and I end up asking more than sometimes people want to share. So feel free to kind of just nip it in the butt if I'm asking something that's too much. The let's talk then regarding then being brought up. When did you find out that your parents were not your biological parents? Do you remember the age you were?
I do not. I remember my mom had a book in her nightstand that was said something. It was like I'm adopted or you're adopted. I don't know, something like that. It was the
Mhm.
title of it, and I remember seeing it and being like, "What? What is this?" And then I think my brother knew because obviously coming at 4, he knew that my parents weren't his parents, and so I think at one point he might have like told me or blabbed about it on the bus, and but I always kept it quiet, and I don't
Mhm.
think there was ever like that formal sit down with my
Mhm.
parents saying like this is what happened and so on and so forth. So it was kind of just one of those things that like they knew I knew they knew, and we just
You just kind of like just lived on. So then did the question ever arise for you in your teens or early, years about even your previous, your birth parents and things like that? Did those questions come up
yeah. So
for you?
not with my parents. My adoptive parents, but I would have them in my head, really just
Hmm.
more along the lines of for health reasons.
Yes.
I didn't have any interest in meeting my birth mother or anything like that. I did. The only thing my mom had was because it was a closed adoption and back
Hmm.
in the 80s, and so she just had some paperwork from the lawyer that just said very simple things like mother allergic to milk, allergic to chlorine, had a previous child who also was given up for adoption. So, real basic. And then at one point, I did fill out something for New York State that basically, if the birth mom wanted to fill it out, she could as well. And then, if there was any sort of additional health information, they would mail it to you.
Hmm.
So, I did fill that out and I did receive something in the mail, but it was just more information that the the state had that really the only thing it told me was that she got her gallbladder out when she was like 22, and ironically I did the exact same thing, so I was like
Oh,
finally that makes
really?
sense why I had to get my gallbladder out. So yeah, and I knew it would crush my mom to like
Hmm.
even want to explore that, and I had no interest whatsoever. There was always a part of me that was like, ooh, what if they're famous or what, like I
Yeah.
wanted to know the story, but
Yeah, no, and now that you said that you knew then that there was a previous child, even that curiosity of maybe not necessarily, okay, knowing who the birth parent is, but oh my gosh, I have another sibling out there. I hope I don't end up marrying my brother or
well, the story gets better because
Okay, dig in,
yeah.
dig in.
So I like I said, I never cared. And then I don't. It might have been before my mom passed away or after. I'm not quite sure. But I filled out the 23andMe, and I
Yeah.
also did Ancestry.com, and that once again was just for the health reasons because 23andMe you can do like the breast cancer gene and a whole bunch of other things, and that's all I really wanted to know. And if you go to the doctor to get any of that done, they won't give it to you. Even if you say you're
Mm.
adopted, they say, well, we don't know your history. Well, more the reason, give it to me. But anyways,
Mhm.
they didn't. So I filled that out, and cousins and things like that would pop up, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I might have Facebook stalked them a little bit, but never did anything about it. And then after Bryan passed away, so last summer, or it was probably before summer, I received a message on 23andMe from a girl that said she was my half sister. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? And so we explored that a little bit, and I started talking to her, and she's like, well, we have to have the same dad because I know my birth mom, and she has said that I'm the only child she's ever had, and so on and so forth. And so um, she sent some pictures over, and by looking at the pictures I was like, no, that has to be my birth mom because she looks identical to me. So we put it together, and then my half sister reached out to the birth mom and said, you need to spill your guts, and she reluctantly still denied, and then said, oh yeah, I had a baby but I don't remember. And so long story short, without getting into too much detail on that, I
Yeah.
have no interest in
Mhm.
meeting birth mom. But
Mhm.
last summer, I actually went back home to Buffalo, and I did meet up with my half sister for the first time, and that was awesome. And she's
How
great.
was that?
It was
Yeah, how much
it,
difference are you guys in ages? How much
so
difference?
she's, I think, about 5 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
And she's great. She has her own family, and she has older kids than me. And it was just great being able to chat about our pasts. And we lived less than an hour away from each other our whole
That is
lives
what's so
growing up.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what's so crazy when people like that, like you live like just a block from people that you're, relate. This is I've heard this a lot uh about these kind of situations, and it's like, wow, we could have ran into each other at the grocery store, things like that
yeah,
before, and
yeah. So it's
wow,
good. So we've
that's good
maintained a relationship, just
connection.
yeah, texting and stuff like
That's
that.
good.
And it's just fun to have an actual sibling, especially where my brother
Yeah,
and I don't have that relationship.
relationship. Hmm.
So it's nice to have a sibling.
And it's important too because, and especially, Brian died of what they call a widow maker heart attack. uh, but you never know, like, you've had already gallbladder removed. You never know a
Hmm.
situation in the future of any organ that, or anything, donate blood, things like
Hmm.
that it's so good that at least you now have that connection, even if it's, not emotional. At least you know how to reach your sister, and vice versa for her to you.
Yeah, and that's exactly why she ended up looking for her birth mom, because her adoptive dad had passed away of a health issue,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Whoa, I need to know my health." And so, thankfully, through her, I have an idea now of health,
Yes,
and nothing major, so that's calming
that's
for
good.
the
Yeah,
hypochondriac in me. And
yeah.
now I have a new relationship
New
to
family.
explore.
Yeah. And thank you for indulging me in going down this area, which
Yeah,
I did not
I
know.
know.
Of course, here I
Sorry.
am discovering. No, no, no. No, so it's nothing to be sorry about. It just shows how candid and impromptu our conversations are, because I'm discovering just alongside the listeners as well. So thank you, Liz. Okay. So you then went to college in New York. Tell us about your dynamics in your relationship with your mom.
Sure.
And then when you got married and those kind of things, and so
Yeah.
forth, because yeah, let's go in there.
Yeah, so I went to school in New York. I did go away from home 3 hours, so nothing too far. My mom, I don't have the exact dates of things, but I my mom originally was diagnosed with breast cancer in, I want to say, when I was like in high school, my senior year or junior year, and then it did come back again in when I was a sophomore in college or a freshman. But both times it was just what they called stage zero. Not a big deal. Might have even been from hormone replacement therapy for menopause and all of
Mm,
that stuff. So
mhm.
they got rid of it. I don't. I think she just had to have radiation, and she worked through the whole thing, and it was no big deal. So we had those two hiccups along the way, and finished up college, and I moved from college. I moved to, Bryan had got a job in Connecticut, so he went to Connecticut. I moved back home to do my student teaching for school, and then graduated that December.
Because you and
uh,
Brian were high school. You guys. had been together since high school.
Yeah, so we started
Yes.
dating as senior year or junior year of high school,
Yeah.
and
Just in
then
case somebody listening this has not heard your episode, so
yeah,
that way they can hear. Yeah.
yeah, we went to college not together but close to each
Close enough.
other.
Uh-huh.
And now as an adult, and I'm able to, I've been through all of this grief and everything like that in my life. I'm able to look back at things and realize that when I was in college, I was 110% full of anxiety, which at the
Mm.
moment I didn't know. I just, felt like I had to be close to Bryan, and I had to. And now I look back at it, I'm like, wow, those were like all little mini panic attacks, and you've been experiencing anxiety for way longer than you thought you
And
were.
then,
So,
would do you
um,
think that anxiety did that anxiety come from knowing that your mom, like having known that your mom was sick, and the anxiety as you're kind of in these developing years of finding out something that you could potentially be terminal, but kind of living, because how many years then did she live with a diagnosis in and out of having breast cancer?
I mean, that was 1998, and she didn't pass away till 2015. So,
Right. Oh yeah. So
yeah,
that's a lot of, yeah, years. So
yeah,
that
and
uncertainty. Mhm.
it very well could have been. To this day, I still have a hard time pinpointing exactly what caused anxiety. I think, issues with my brother over the years, I don't think helped the
Mhm.
situation. But my anxiety, like full fledged, didn't start until when I moved back home to do my student teaching. And then basically when I graduated college, and it was like, okay, Liz, life is yours. It awaits. Jump on in there. And I was supposed to drive to go see Bryan in Boston at the time because he moved from Connecticut to Boston. And getting in the car and driving was no big deal for me. I would drive 8 hours at a time, just see you later. But for whatever reason, I just did not want to go. And then I finally ended up going, and like 2 hours in, had a massive panic attack on the highway. And the second I turned around to go back to my parents' house, I was totally fine. And then I was like, okay, this is an actual issue. So it's ironically, yeah, when I had nothing to really worry about besides life, is
Mhm.
when, the anxiety started. But I'm sure some of it probably manifested from my mom's illness for sure.
Mhm. Did you end up seeking when you did know that that's what you were having, like at the point that you did, like, wait a minute, I can't even drive now
Yeah.
because I'm having this. Did you seek for help at that moment with
Oh,
your
yeah.
anxiety?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went home and my mom was like, "What is wrong with you? You've never acted like this before." And so she dragged me to some psychologist, psychiatrist. I don't
Mhm.
even know. I did not like the man. It was horrible.
Mhm.
But I think at that time, I ended up going on a medication, and it was able to help me, settle my life back. And then ever since then, it's just been kind of ups and downs of anxiety waves, just like grief
Mhm.
waves. They go together.
There you go. But now that you know that that is what it is, are you just like how we know when
Mhm.
what grief is, like we're like, okay, this is a grief wave and it's coming, and I know kind of how to name it, at least, and what's happening. Does it make a difference then now for you when you're having an anxiety or episode or a panic attack? Does it help you knowing that that is what is happening in order to then learn how to kind of cope with it as it's occurring?
Absolutely, 100%. I think, over the years, I've done a lot of work on myself. Really, most recently is when I've done the most work, and being able to know that, oh, this is just anxiety. And like, I could wake up and be like, okay, it's a little bit in my chest today. What can I do
Mm.
to get out of it? And then it just turns into the self talk, and really just focusing on whether it's meditation or breathing or whatever the case might be. Just to, basically, I'm in control of myself. I have the power to control my day. And how can I get out of this?
Okay. So you mentioned that this is something more that you've started kind of working on more recently on yourself. So does that and it's your puppy? Your puppy?
Yeah,
I know.
when he
Yeah, if
hears
people
me
hear that
talking,
one's we'll
he wants
probably
to
hear
play.
on both sides. No problem. I'm the same. The little one, the new one is sleeping right now, but the same. I'll have to be like, okay, he might need to go to if he wakes up, I'll have to open the door to take,
Yeah.
do potty. So it's like the things of doing podcasts at home are that of like, oh my gosh, if somebody rings the doorbell, they're gonna bark, and then that's gonna the microphone's gonna pick that up. Um, okay, so then with okay, so you were talking about then the growth on yourself, and like knowing then, okay, when you wake up kind of feeling a certain way, because I'm sure too well, maybe because you've had those for years, like you don't relate that to thinking that it's something going on with your heart, do you, at
No,
any
no,
point now? Yeah.
I'm really good at that.
Okay.
Now, I'm still a hypochondriac in other areas, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely know, like, okay, I'm not having a heart attack. I'm not, yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
good at that part.
Okay. So then what kind of then work, you were talking then about your self-talk, like kind of like getting yourself out of it. Walk us through that in the anxiety component, and and also share with that, is that something you also use then in your grief waves as well?
Yeah. So what I've learned, after, and I know we'll talk about my mom's death
Mhm.
still, but what I've learned after my mom's death, I pretty much just stuffed it. It took me a long time to even process it. While it was very expected, which made it easier in some regards, it definitely was way easier for me just to kind of take on the caretaker mode and make sure my dad was okay and make sure I was still doing everything that my mom would do and want to be done, and really just not processing the fact that she was no longer there. And I had a
Mhm.
toddler at the time. And so I was a busy person.
How,
Fast
how
forward.
old was it was Eva that you
Yeah.
had at that, so Eva was how old when your mom died?
Let's see. She was 4.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was
So
4.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I was busy, and I just, it was, and we kept moving with Bryan's job, and it was just busy, busy, busy. So I accepted it and just moved forward. I guess that my mom had passed on, and um, it wasn't until probably like October of 2018. So my mom died in
Mhm.
2015. That I We had moved to Texas, and I was, finally we were settled, and I think I was finally starting to digest the fact that she had passed away.
Mm.
And things were happening like in my daily life, like I was struggling with work because, and I couldn't explain any of it. Like I was getting behind on
Mm.
emails and just stuff that was not typically like me.
The
Um,
foggy brain,
yes.
the grief brain. Yeah.
Yeah, the foggy brain, and definitely just, but the problem was I wasn't putting a name to what was happening. And
Mhm.
somebody could look at it and be like, "Oh, well, you just moved to a new city and you're probably sad." And it wasn't any of that. It was really the fact that I never digested anything with my mom.
Mhm.
So I remember in October-ish, I bought like a couple of books, like the Dead Moms Club, and started to really, think about going back to therapy and processing all of the death of my mom, essentially.
Mhm.
Fast forward then a couple of months later when my husband passes away, which was totally shocking and not expected at all. um, I learned that I needed to deal with it right away. I couldn't
Mm.
just stuff it. And now I was on my own too.
Mhm.
When my mom died, Bryan was my rock, and he was there for me, and comforted me and all of that. And now my rock is gone, so now I have to be my own rock. So I've learned through this experience that I can't stuff it. I really, and it goes with both grief and with anxiety. I just need
Mm.
to be open and honest with myself and with others around me, and let them know what's going on, let myself know what's going on, being open and honest with a therapist, things like that, in order to process this and be able to move forward. And that's definitely what I've been doing. And it's been eye opening and very helpful, obviously.
Wow, no, that is so true. Yeah, I always make the analogy of kind of like a pressure cooker. Like it's like when you just kind of leave it there. If you don't let the have you cooked in a pressure cooker
Oh, yeah.
before? Like, yeah, you have to let the steam out slowly first before you open it. And that's, I think, what it is with grief, like allowing it to just come out, steam out,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just suddenly just popping it, open like that, right? Because it is
Yeah.
definitely more. And I'm assuming with anxiety then it would be the same scenario. Like if you let it kind of come in as steam rather than just stuffing it, you won't get like this huge
Yeah.
episode per se. Yeah, I agree with that, for myself as well. That's kind of what's helped. So you were saying first that your first therapist when you were dealing with anxiety was somebody you did not like. So necessarily, did find a therapist that worked for you in
I
that
mean,
process, or kind of
no.
no? Okay,
Honestly, no.
no,
But
okay.
I can't blame the therapist. I really need to blame myself too, that I wasn't being honest and I wasn't being vulnerable.
Mm,
And I only know this now because I finally found a therapist that I am able to open up to and that I have been putting the work in. I mean, even when Bryan first died, the therapist that I was seeing, I thoroughly enjoyed going. However, I realized it was just like chatting with my friend for an hour. I wasn't doing anything to help myself get better. So over
mm,
the years, I've seen plenty of different therapists. I'm really good at reading my body, and I don't know how to teach others to do that per se, but I can really tell when, okay, it's time to go talk to somebody, or okay, it's time
mm,
to take medication. Oh, you're good. You can get off of it now. So over the years, I've just kind of dealt with it and, and
mhm.
had my ups and my downs and went on medicine when I needed to and off of it when I didn't need to. And um, so, yeah, I never really found the perfect therapist until now.
Until now. And the one now, then, aside from the anxiety, then of course has helped you more, like, with coping with your grief journey as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so now let's fast, like, I'm my conversations are not linear. As in, I say this in other episodes, like, it's just like grief, it's not linear.
Yep.
My conversations aren't either. My interviews aren't either. So, let's go back then to 2015 when your mom passed away. You had already moved to Texas, or no, you moved to Texas
No.
in 2018. So
Yeah.
did you guys live in 2015? Your parents were still in New York,
Yep. So
and
my
were you guys in New
parents,
York? Hmm.
we were in New York actually. We had lived in Boston and then we moved to Maryland for a year, which my mom loved that. And there was gossip about Toyota moving to Texas, and my mom used to say, "If you move to Texas, I'm going to be so mad at you," like to Bryan and whatnot. However, she would have loved it here. But anyways,
Hmm.
we were only in Maryland for a year, and then we moved up to New York. But we were on the other side of the state, so we were still a good 6 hours away from my parents. So my mom was able to see that house. They came up in February of that year. So she was able to see it, and then she passed away in July of that year. So what had happened is she had the breast cancer twice, and then in it was like 2012, I think, around then, she one day or overtime or whatnot just
Hmm.
turned yellow. Her skin from
Oh,
head to toe
jaundice.
was yellow.
Hmm.
Yep, jaundice, eyeballs, everything. The doctor said she looked like a pumpkin. And it was like, and she's really Italian, rich skin, so
Hmm.
it was a unique color, so to say.
Hmm.
But she was yellow, itchy, and all of that. So they were actually at my house when it had happened, and so she went home, went to the doctor. Long story short, they determined that she had bile duct cancer,
Hmm.
which is incredibly rare. So that was, and they don't think that it came from the breast cancer. It just happened to be, a bad luck. But who knows? I mean, a
So
very
it was not a second. It was not the breast cancer spreading
no, they
to the
didn't.
body. Oh,
Yeah, they said
interesting.
that it was not. So I don't know how they can
Interesting.
determine that. I would
Hmm.
think that it was, but who knows?
Hmm.
So in February of 2014, or no, of so when she first was diagnosed, they ended up doing this major surgery. It was like 12 hours long, where they essentially went in and it's called the Whipple. I don't know the
Yeah,
exact
yeah, yeah.
details, but yeah, they went in and rearranged everything and
Hmm.
put some stents in and stuff like that. And she was doing fine for a while. And then she did chemo, radiation, all that good stuff. And then in 2014, it came back, or they found another. Basically, the stents kept getting blocked. So they found another tumor, and then I think it went into the pancreas a little bit, and so she fought it so incredibly hard from basically 2012. She did have a couple of good years, or months in there, I should say. But then when it came back in 2014, she fought it for a good year, and it was a definitely a miserable year. I One of the things that she had completed as she was, throughout her journey, was somebody gave her a journal. And so she, every day in this journal, wrote stuff down. And I never read it. And honestly, I still had never read it until this morning, because I was like, you know what? I'm going on this podcast. I should probably, check in to
Are
see. And
you serious?
yeah,
This podcast interview was the catalyst for you reading
yes,
her journal entries.
yes. And it's not like, part of me wanted it to be very, like, oh, I love my family and this and that. It wasn't. It was like, I went to the doctor today and my blood pressure was this and I'm
It was like her
tired.
record, her
It
medical
was.
record.
It really
Yeah, yeah.
was. Because she used to joke that, with chemo brain, she couldn't remember anything. So she would come
Mm,
home and write it all down. But there was some good stuff in there, like talking about Eva and how much light she brings to her world and how
mm.
helpful I was. And she was complaining about my dad being a pain in the butt. And so,
How is it reading it? How was it then reading it this morning? Like so many years later. Um,
it's
how
definitely,
do you?
yeah, I mean, definitely therapeutic. I'm at a
Mm-hmm,
good place right now where it was probably good that I waited so long.
mm,
I have a voicemail on my phone that I've never fully listened to, and it was the day before she passed away. She had called me to, I don't know, bring her. She was in like a rehab type center,
mm-hmm.
and she had called me to bring her pajamas or something. And it's like 3 minutes long, and I still haven't listened to the whole thing, but it's on my phone
Mm.
if I ever want it. So
Well, you might want to upload it and save it just in case
I
anything were
did.
to.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay,
it's on
good,
a
good.
computer, and I just got a new
Oh,
computer,
good.
so I should put it on there too. But yeah,
Good, good.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. The timing with things like that, I feel like when you're ready, like it's gonna be
Hmm.
exactly the time that
Yeah.
you needed it. I've realized that like I had a book my mom gave me, which was of poems, like poems for my daughter, something like that. She gave it to me years and years and years ago. Um, and after she passed away, like I had forgotten about that book, and I don't think I had read all the poems in there
Mm.
either. And then when she had like a year after she had died, I went and got opened the book and read her the when you how
Yeah,
do you
like the
the
message.
yeah, little message at the and it said, read the one on page da da da. It's the one
Aw,
that, and when I read that in that moment on that day, it felt like it was exactly the what I needed her to tell me
for that
that
day.
day. Yeah,
Aw,
it was like it was, even though she had written it way before she was even, sick, before I even had kids, like a
yeah,
long, and it was just so perfect. So when you're ready to listen to the whole message, it'll be
yeah.
the time it needed to be. Thank you for sharing those things, because I think that that's important for people to know, because sometimes we feel people ask, like, when did you get rid of the clothes of
Mm,
your mom, or when did you do this or that, and honestly everybody's timing is unique to them as to when they choose to do those different milestones
yeah, and
in their life.
that's one thing I learned. It's so silly saying I learned it from this death versus this death, but
Mm,
one
mm,
thing I learned, like when my mom passed away, like I said before, I stepped into caretaker mode. I made sure that like the funeral was perfect and everybody, like my brother, his kids had the right clothes, and my mom was always the one who, like, whenever anybody died, how everybody brings food to people's houses, my mom
mm,
always
mm.
brought cups, paper plates, napkins, spoons, forks, knives, coffee. So like I made sure we had all of that, and I still find myself doing that to this
Mm.
day. Like, oh, somebody died, oh, I'll bring paper plates. But yeah,
Mhm.
so
So
and
that they
I
don't have to worry about washing. That's a great tip right there.
yeah.
Everybody write that one down. We always think of, what casserole should I make?
Yeah.
But that's a great idea. Bring the paper goods so
Yep.
that they don't even have to wash for a few days, because they may not feel like even putting any dishes in the
Exactly.
dishwasher. That's wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead,
But
continue.
one thing that I did do though is I was only home with my dad for a certain amount of time. I can't remember. I think I was working from home at the time, so I was able to stay. Um, One of my favorite memories of the entire night was, and I'm like not being linear right now either. So,
Mhm.
um, so when my mom was actually, we had just visited her, and then we drove back because Bryan had to go back to work, and then I think our plans were to go back the following weekend because we knew it wasn't good. So we're like, we'll just come back every weekend. And my dad had called and said, this isn't looking good. You should come home. And I said, okay, fine. So we jumped in the car, and we were maybe 3 hours from home when my dad called to tell me that she actually passed away. And
Mm.
so then the rest of the car ride was just like, silence. And we didn't get home until probably like at 7 or 8 or at night. And when we pulled into my driveway, my dad wasn't home yet, but my parents have like this gorgeous deck on the back of the house, and the entire deck was filled with all of my dad's friends, like all of his beer drinking
Mm.
buddies and whatnot. They were all sitting there waiting for him to come home from the hospital. So then when he actually got out of the car and came home, it was just it was so nice. Like I have goosebumps right now.
Mm.
It was so nice that everybody cared about him so much and that they all showed up, and it made me like feel like, okay, I don't have to worry. So I don't remember
Mm.
how long I stayed home with him, but one of the things that I definitely wanted to help him with was to go through my mom's stuff, because she had so much stuff. She had a shopping problem just like me, and I was like, let me help you with this. And I went through all of her stuff, and we brought probably like 13 big black garbage bags to Goodwill and all of that. And fast forward to, grief experience number 2, I was like, I'm not getting rid of any of Bryan's stuff yet, because I might want to do something with it. And my aunt made awesome bears out of his shirts and things like that for the girls. And I look back and I'm like, I got rid of all of my mom's stuff. Like I
Mm.
saved nothing. I mean, I saved jewelry and stuff like that, but like to have like a bear made out of her shirt, I would love right now. So, word of
Mhm.
advice is, well, it feels good to just help and clear it out and feel like you're getting something accomplished. In the same sense, like, don't necessarily do it so fast. So,
Mhm.
with Bryan's stuff, I did get rid of some stuff, but I moved pretty much all of his stuff from our master closet to a spare closet. And now it's still haunting me. Like just not too long ago. And like you said, when it's time. Not too
Mhm.
long ago, I said to Dave, I'm like, I need to clean out that closet. Like it's just weighing on me. And
Mhm.
knowing me, I'll probably just put them in bins and put it upstairs in the attic. But then at least, the closet will be clear. Um, so yeah, I got rid of my mom's stuff too soon, so to say. And
Don't you feel? Yeah.
my dad probably wouldn't agree, because he still calls me and he's like, there's stuff everywhere. And what do I do with
Mhm.
this? And what do I do with that? So,
Yeah, it too soon and for what you would have wanted to do as now as you're experiencing. And
yeah,
the whole thing with the shirts of the bears, those are that's so cute. I heard that in one of the episodes of somebody that's what they did with her brother's shirts for her kids. Like she made those bears, and I had never heard of those little memory bears or something like that.
yeah,
That's so thoughtful. Does Dave still have a closet of his first wife's Sharon, right? Is that
yeah,
correct?
Sherry. Yeah, yeah.
Sherry's clothes too. Is it?
So he actually, when I had first met him, obviously his closet, his house was still untouched. And it wasn't until we started living together that, and he ended up renting his house out. But I actually went over and helped him one day, because I didn't want him to have to do it himself. But
Mhm.
I didn't know what was important and what wasn't important. And being a typical dude, he's like, whatever,
Mhm.
but we did find some stuff. So I went through it and actually picked out stuff that I thought was fun, and that his daughter would appreciate one
Mhm.
day down the road. So we have a good sized bin of, her clothes, and my aunt took some of it and made a bear for his daughter too. And
Oh,
yeah,
that is so beautiful, and it's so true because then you as a woman and as a mom of two other girls and having you yourself lost your mom, you can relate to what Dave's daughter is going through as well. That
yeah,
what will be significant maybe for her as she gets older and stuff because she was so
absolutely.
little too. So, um, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so when your mom then passed away, you went into this mode then of being the one taking care of the things, doing the funeral, doing this and so forth. And the emotions of grief kind of went in the back burner.
Yeah,
Okay. Then 3 years later, when you moved here, now when you moved then to Texas,
yeah.
um, was when Pandora's box kind of flew open. And I know you mentioned that some people say, "Oh, it's probably because you're sad because you moved." But I'm wondering, just when you were saying that, I'm wondering if even the grief of a move
Oh, I'm
opened up
sure.
this other wound of the
Mm-hmm.
grief of your mom, dying
Yeah.
because it was like a different space and time. So share with us more then about that. You were feeling kind of foggy brained, things weren't coping. So take us into that and how it is you started to then do your healing process, right? Then it was just a year, not even a year, right? A few months late,
Yeah.
6 months, yeah, late. Not you moved here when in 2018?
We moved here in actually December of 2017. We closed it like the end of the year.
Oh, 2017.
Yeah.
And then Bryan died in 2019.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So March.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you're probably right that the move brings grief.
Mm-hmm.
However, definitely excited about this Texas move because we had this is where Toyota opened their headquarters. And so it was going to be no more moving. And Eva was at the age, she was in kindergarten or first grade when we moved. So she was at the age that we just couldn't keep bouncing around the country. Bryan didn't want to do that to the girls. So there was probably something to it that this was like our final destination, at least for, long term.
Mm-hmm.
That probably brought about some sort of emotion as well, that this is where we are and we're not leaving, and we are far away from home. Every other state we've lived in, it's been a quick-ish car ride to get
Mm-hmm.
home, where this was an airplane ride, and I
Mm-hmm.
hate flying, so that probably played into it too. So I think there was a lot of that going on. I mean, my dad definitely would still come visit and things like that, but I think there was just a lot of that probably rolled into, okay, yes, we're settled now. Okay, now it's time to think about how you lost your mom, and you can't call your mom to tell her about this problem or that problem, and you're so far away from your dad and you have no friends or family in the area. So yeah, you're probably right, a lot of that piled into it. And I started to, I don't know if shutdown's the right word, but usually when seasonal changes come to, my emotions get all out
Mm-hmm.
of whack, and so it was going into that winter, drab,
Mm-hmm.
dull,
Yeah.
even though it's still
Yeah,
nice
no,
here.
there, and
But
it's a real thing. Like people like that, those aspects of quote unquote depression, sadness, whatever you want to
mm-hmm,
call it, based on the seasons. A lot of people go through that.
yeah,
So yeah, so then that
yeah.
started to occur,
Yep,
and then
I had
hmm
that going on, and I remember at work I got in trouble for something, and it was just everything was very unlike me, because I'm a
mm,
people pleaser by nature. And so Bryan and I had some discussions about it, but he was always super busy with his own job, and while he devoted time to me, it was never open communication, so to say. Uh, but so a lot of it I dealt with on my own, and just really what it probably transformed into was more like different health things, like, oh, now I think I have this wrong with me, I need to go to this doctor, or I should go to this doctor. And really, rather than just sitting down and admitting, this is what's going on, let's deal with it, I would kind of make excuses up along the way.
so when did you actually begin to have that honest look at those emotions?
So I feel like it was, like I said, like in that
When
October
Brian,
time frame
hmm
before Bride died,
right before he
where
died.
I was starting to think about it. But
Mm-hmm.
then the holidays and all of that rolled around, and life was stressful with Brian's job and whatnot. So it's almost like I was just starting to touch it,
Mm-hmm.
and then life got crazy, and then Brian died.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just, talk about opening a box, like everything
That was
just,
all of it.
my whole world fell apart in 2 hours. So
Yeah, yeah, Liz and I met actually at the CrossFit gym. I think we only see each we only saw each other a couple
yeah, it was just
times
a couple
because
of
I saw
times.
you. Yeah, the day I saw you was they had just done a workout, I think, in honor of Brian, and then you're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, he's my husband. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. Like we're sitting there and they were gonna do a workout in his honor, and I didn't even know that I was talking to his widow. When that happened. Um so when then he died, then your all of these emotions start opening up. His death, your mom's death, you have your mom of two young girls in that moment. What were some of the tools then that you used at that moment to help you navigate your grief?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was just letting people help. I'm definitely a terrible delegator. I like to do everything myself. I was laughing this morning because when I was reading my mom's journal, I flagged the page. She actually said um, something of, let's see, oh, my dad and I redid her laundry room while she was
Uh-huh.
at home recovering, and it was filled with like all of her Tupperware and all of that. And I'm known to just throw things, and she keeps everything. And so she said that she was working on her laundry room, and I moved all of her stuff around, and she tried to help me, but she couldn't, and she got so angry. And she's like, I could hardly stand it, and I don't like not being in control. And I was like, oh, that's me. So I definitely like being in control, but I did learn that when Bryan died, that I just had to let others help me. So
Mm.
my door became just an open door. My next door neighbor just took over with a clipboard, and she started, this is what we need to do. Other neighbors were bringing food in, they were cleaning my house, and I just sat there and let them help. So that was definitely hard for me to do, but I really had no choice. And then, really, and then asking for help too. So my dad, he was on vacation in Florida when it happened, and he ended up flying here, and he didn't. So this happened in March, and he didn't leave until July, which I never in a million years. I mean, my dad and I are close. My mom and I were closer, I guess, just that mom daughter
Mhm.
bond. But I never expected him to stop his life like that, and come stay with me for that long. And but I had asked, and it happened. So it's just really about being
And
honest. And
and if anyone could relate to what you were going through was your dad, because
absolutely,
he had lost his partner.
yeah, and we've become closer in that regard because he's at times experienced some panic and anxiety now. And back when I first was having panic, he didn't get it. He was like, just what's wrong with you, snap out of it. And now that
Mhm.
he's had it, he'll be like, oh, I totally understand, I get it, I get it. And so it's
Mhm.
nice to have that relationship where I can talk, and he'll understand. And then same with Dave. Dave's been through stuff too, and so I can talk to Dave, and he gets it. And it's nice to have those people in your world. And I know it's not always easy to find those people, but I mean, with all of the growing that I've done throughout this journey, when I surround myself by other widows, it definitely is helpful for me.
So the sense of community. So one, if somebody doesn't have within their immediate circle people like yourself, that you have your dad that that relates to what you're going through because he also had his, lost his wife,
Mm-hmm.
your partner, your, Dave, who also can relate to what you've gone through because he also is a widower. Um, if someone doesn't have that, then the next thing, which you also have, is a group of other widows who relate to what you're going through. So two huge things you said. One is the aspect of allowing others to help you, and the
Yep.
other one seeking community, as well, for that support. Would there be any other tools? Of course, and you mentioned, finding the right therapist, but being honest with your
Yes.
being honest with your emotions in order for that therapy to actually work.
Yes, yeah, most definitely there. I think, becoming vulnerable has been a journey for me, but it's definitely
Mhm.
has been what has helped me. Even doing podcasts like this, like being able to tell my
Mhm.
story and to say it out loud, knowing that I might be able to help somebody else, definitely pushes me and keeps me going forward. Another thing is, like I've said, just don't stuff it. It does
Mhm.
not help. It's going to come back at some point in time. So why not just deal with it now? And
Mhm.
I know, it's hard to find those groups of people, but sometimes you just have to put yourself out there to find them. Like, they didn't just come to me. I had to go out there and find those groups. And, like Journey of Hope, that we did in kind of still sometimes do,
Mhm.
in Texas. It's really just, it's going out and finding your people. And even if you don't have grief people, so to say, I have found a group of friends that just, I'm open and honest with them, and I tell them, this is a crappy day, or I had this
Mhm.
dream last night. And it's just not hiding anything. And that's what I've learned, that life is short. It's not worth it to hide stuff and to be secretive. And it's way easier. Like, like Dave and I, we just put it on the table. There's an issue, let's talk about it. And
Mhm.
I'm upset about something because I'm sad about something. Like, let me tell you why I'm upset. And it makes life so much easier. I love it that way.
I, what you're saying right now, I just got chills because you mentioned right before, like how even though with Bryan, when your mom died, like he was there, but not, you guys wouldn't necessarily talk about emotions. The fact that
Mm-hmm.
now the woman that you are now, having been through these two experiences, how different you are. Like, that growth of, like, now what you're saying, now you just share everything, all this growth that has occurred because of these experiences and how different it makes it feel in your body. Do you find that you are less anxious now in general? Do you feel that the anxiety is different as you now maybe share more about your emotions?
So, I mean, it's definitely not a walk in the park.
Mhm.
I still have to constantly remind myself, and Dave will remind me too, and my friends will remind me that I have grown and this is how far I've grown and I'm doing a great
Mhm.
job. Because there are still plenty days and moments where I'm like, ugh, like I'm not at rock bottom, but I'm falling, and
Mm.
I'm not though. I'm definitely moving forward. In terms of anxiety, that definitely comes and goes. I would say this fall, I definitely fell again.
Mhm.
In terms of just the really probably more with the depression and the anxiety revolved around losing Bryan and
Mhm.
my mom, I'm sure as well. And
Mhm.
it morphs into me not wanting to have to drive anywhere. And the second I know that happens, like I don't want to get in the car and drive, then I'm like, okay, time to switch gears and attack this before it becomes a bigger problem. So I've been working
Mm.
on that and really, outside of medication, things that I have found helpful that I once used to stick my nose up at is meditation and yoga, although I haven't been doing yoga, but meditation and
Moving your body.
yeah,
You do, yeah, exercise. Mhm.
yeah, exercising, meditation, really just finding time to put time into me
Mm.
versus being that person who takes care of everybody else. It's just like they say, you have to put your oxygen mask on first when you're on the plane. Same thing. If I don't fix me first, then everybody else who I'm trying to grow or work with aren't going to grow. So I've been doing the meditation. I have also been working on just really setting up a routine and habits. So I'd like to do every morning, I'll wake up and I have a book that I'm reading and I'll work through one chapter of the book and I rotate whether it's like a self-help book or, whatever kind of book. So, the kids go off to school, I make my tea, I meditate, I read a chapter of my book, and then that really just sets my mind frame up for the day. I'm still working on the working out portion. I got to get better with that, but it'll get there.
It's awesome. No, these are great tips. I'm writing them down because, even again, like, even if I may have some tools that have helped me, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily mean that those same tools might work for someone else. So it's always
Yeah.
good to learn from others what's worked for them in case someone else I know is going through something, sharing, well, this worked for my friend Liz, it might work for you as well, or, things like that. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Now, in this journey of grief, going through the uh, death of your mom and then that of the death of Bryan, how was it for you helping your daughters in their grief journey of the loss of their parent since
Yeah.
you had lost a parent?
So, I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm failing at it on a daily basis. um,
First off, by the way, thank you, Liz, for being so honest because we always all feel like we're
I know.
parents. We always feel like we're failing.
Yeah. I mean, I have my good days and bad days, but I feel
Mhm,
like a lot of times there's more I could be doing.
mhm,
Because it's one of those things where, they were young. Eva was 7. Emmy was a baby. She has no recollection besides pictures. And Eva, I always just, she's my little rock. She's tough. She's not, we give her a hard time. She's not the hugging type. She's kind of a little rough around the edges. But then I say to myself, I'm like, well, wait, well, is she not that way because she's
mm,
put up her shield and she really wants to be
mm,
hugged and she really wants to be able to talk about things? So, I go back and forth with it. Dave's great with being able to help me, figure out what she's thinking and where she is. We did have I did have therapy for her initially after Bryan
mhm,
died, and she graduated out of it. However, just recently I've noticed with preteen stresses and
mhm,
going into middle school and all of that stuff, her and I actually just had a conversation the other day of, do you think you might want to go back and chat with somebody? It doesn't have to be about dad. It could just be about, life and friendships and things like that. And she was like, yeah, I'd go back. So I'm in the process of, getting her started back up with that. But when I say I fail, I think it's just because sometimes, like I said, they were so young and life just seemed so easy. And, Dave and I finding each other the way that we did is just
Mhm.
miraculous. And it's so good. And, they love him and he loves them. And it's just like this perfect little family that we've put together. And so sometimes it's hard to want to approach the situation and be like, let's talk about dad, because it just seems so
Mhm.
good. You don't want to, like, pop the bubble,
Jinx
and,
it.
and yes, you don't want things to go downhill. But I
Mhm.
worry that if I don't talk about it, that then I'm just helping her stuff it just like I did. So it's
Mm.
definitely a balance of trying to figure out exactly what to do, what not to do. So, as of so far, like I said, she's been to therapy. Both girls have pictures in their rooms of him, and there's pictures throughout the house. And whenever there's an anniversary, whether it's of his death or his birthday, we're always celebrating. So we keep it light and fun. And, I'm here if they ever want to talk, more in depth about things, but
And
it's
I
hard.
love that because I've, friends with you on Facebook and seeing when it's their birthdays, any of the girls' birthday, you always tag Bryan still on his
Yeah.
account too. Like, so it's like, acknowledging that this, the dual, the two of you is, like still like I think it's so beautiful that in in the midst of your joy of this family that you and Dave have now, created, you guys can still honor each other where you're at and then honor the girls where they're at with their grief as well. And I think that's just so important. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you. Liz, is there anything I have not asked you or anything that you want to share with the listeners of anything else, whether it has to do with the grieving of a parent or of a spouse, whichever one you want to share, or any tools or any words of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gone over a lot. Nobody wants to lose anybody in life. However, it's bound to happen. And when I lost my mom, I was relieved in the sense that she suffered for so long that I felt like finally she could be at peace and not have to, especially reading her journal today. It's just like, every day not feeling well. Like, I can't imagine. So I was relieved for her, obviously sad, but relieved for my dad, because he was able to, luckily they both retired when they were 55. So she had 10 fun years, of retirement. But I was relieved for him that he was able to almost have a second go at life as well, and not have to, be held down by illness. And then, I was thrown into the Dead Moms Club, so to say. And
Mhm.
it's a club that nobody wants to be a part of. And I thought, how much worse could this get? I have my dad, it'll be okay. Never dreaming that, I would lose my husband. And then I became a member of the Dead Husbands Club,
Mm.
which is worse, if that's possible. But,
Mm.
I think the biggest thing is just, it's so easy to fall into a rut and really not feel like you're going to be able to dig yourself out. And you just have to open up and ask for help, and be honest with those that love you, because they want to help you. There's always people out there that say, what can I do, what can I do? And
Mhm.
you don't necessarily want flowers or a fruit basket. You want babysitting for a night, or you want, to go to the spa and get a massage, or just to have 10 minutes to yourself, or just to talk to somebody and have them not say back, oh, I know how you feel, because they don't know how you feel. Yeah, I think that really just being able to open up and talk to people and let them know what you need is how you're going to be able to grow out of it and move forward.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing those tips, because those are things that, as someone's listening to this, if you yourself have not experienced something but know of someone that has and has gone through anything similar to what Liz has gone through, she's giving us some tips as to what it is she that you like. So um thank you. Yeah, the aspect of just even just 10 minutes to yourself as a single mom, as a widow, is huge. So that in itself is a gift, better than some flowers. So offer to babysit, even if it's like for someone to go to the spa for an hour, do something for themselves. That in itself is a huge gift. Thank you so much, Liz. And again, this was Elizabeth Hall that we had on the podcast today. And we'll be sharing more information below in the show notes if you ever need to reach out in any way. If you yourself can relate to any aspect of her story, you can reach out to her. Thank you again, Liz.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.